Hello everybody and welcome to another wonderful episode of Positivity. I would love for today's guest to introduce herself and share a little bit more about where she is today in the wonderful UK.
So I'm Dhruti Shah and I'm currently in London, in West London actually, in the outskirts, in my little bedroom, as you see. So welcome to my abode. I'm a journalist and this is where I operate, to be honest. I used to work far more full-time in New Broadcasting House in Oxford Circus in London, so the BBC's headquarters. But clearly because of the pandemic, a lot of working from home, and here I am. Woohoo.
Yes, and as a journalist for the BBC, obviously being in your house and being in your bedroom, obviously you've had to adapt quite a lot. Have you felt that sort of 6 months later you're finding the benefits of that, or as a journalist it must be incredibly difficult?
It's strange because normally having that ability to go out, to go and speak to people, I definitely miss it. However, like everybody else in all industries, we've had to completely adapt. I work in something called digital news gathering, so a lot of my work is in the social sphere, so yay internet. And basically what I've been doing is conducting a lot of interviews via Zoom, via other video streams, from my room. So I've been speaking to people in the US, I've been speaking to people all over the world about their experiences. The most recent story that I did was on the US election, and that the fact that that's upcoming, and speaking to potential voters who, to be fair with you, I wouldn't probably go out to the US anyway right now, but it is very strange to be like, hi, I'm in my room. There's a slight blurring of like work-life boundaries. And it's just trying to adapt to that, and it's not necessarily easy, if I'm perfectly frank with you.
No.
It's a little bit
and with talking to people in another country, especially in the US, are you finding that their experience of the last few months has been the same, different, and especially with an election coming up, how are they coping out there?
Yeah, but coronavirus is clearly the big issue. It's affected everybody's lives. So the piece that I was working on at that point, we were particularly speaking to people about coronavirus because they were aged 65 and older, and therefore they were at more risk. And so every element was, how is it affecting you? And they would be talking about how they were wearing masks, how they would be not going out, how they were very much limiting their lives, much like a lot of us here are as well, to be honest. So there was a lot of commonality. And in one aspect that's helpful for me as a journalist, because then you're able to establish a relationship of trust, a bond, as it were, even though you're having to do it via Zoom and you're having to do it via a screen. You have these as well. You have these interruptions. You're having to factor those. You're having to factor those in and be like, well, that's cool because what's your dog like? Let me, can we say hello? And then you just sort of keep continuing, because that's just the way that it is. I think in previous settings you'd be like, oh no, we won't factor that in, and it's like, well, no, actually everyone's lives, this will resonate with whoever. So for example, in one, I was speaking to one interviewee, and I actually put in the piece in the end that they live wherever they lived with their dog, and particularly mentioned the dog because I felt it was important as part of the story that I was perceiving that the dog kept coming in and out of the shot, the dog kept coming in and out of the interview, and therefore was very much a part of this family's life.
So it humanizes everyone, doesn't it? That previously wasn't able to happen.
No, and I think that's really, really important to sort of remember those elements, that whereas there's a lot of people at home, and I think a lot of people are feeling isolated again in whatever industry that they're doing, and it's like, well, actually you're not alone in that respect, and somebody else, elsewhere that we're reporting on, whichever story it is, it's important to try and bring in a bit of flavor of what their home life is like.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know whether you found it, but one thing I've really missed is particularly in the business world, not necessarily with my friends I've engaged in other ways, but I've really missed that face-to-face contact, and that meeting, having a coffee with someone to share ideas, meeting for the first time. It's always a lot harder to do that online. How have you adapted to...
You're completely right, basically, and I'm really glad that we're having this positivity, partly because I like the the word and the pun involved, and I've got my tea, which is but you're right.
And what is your tea of choice before we
I'm a builder, man. I like to have a good old builder's tea.
Fancy. That's what we love. Cheers.
I'm gonna have a little slurp now.
I saw I love my grandma on that mug as well. Talk me through it.
It is. I should have been, more savvy and had like, a very branded, a very Dhruti mug. But no, my mother's. I was about to call her my nan. My mother's mug actually, and it's sweet because it's from like my niece and nephew, and it gets to a point, I think, when there are children around that you start adapting the language that you're using for your own parents, which is really strange because I'm like, I never could have. Why would I call my mum like grandma or like nanny? Because that's what we'd say in Gujarati is nanny, and it's just like she's not. But yet now I'm like, so is nanny doing this? And I'm like, it's not my nanny. My nanny is, sadly my nanny's long gone. But it's a bit like that doesn't make any sense.
Go with it, don't you?
Yeah, but it does. I mean, having tea is so like it's so important. Although saying that, now that I'm at home and not in the office, my tea consumption has actually gone down. Like it's partly because we're talking about connections and networking. One of the key things is that I would go out wandering around the office, meet people on different floors, meet people in different departments, and I think that was really, really important, partly for my sanity, to go and just to find out what's going on and make that connection. And tea is a significant part of that. Like let's go for a coffee, let's go for 10 minutes, let's even walk to the coffee shop and back because we're busy, but having that moment, and you don't get to have that anymore. And it's weird saying let's meet for a virtual coffee or tea, but yet I'm finding myself more and more trying to do that because otherwise it's not mentally healthy, I think.
No, exactly. And I think there's two elements to that. One is sort of it's the checking in with people, isn't it? You don't have that opportunity to go for that cuppa and just say, hey, you okay? Now it's very much like bam, 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 zoom, 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 whatever it is. So having positivity, I think, is really important. And actually in a working environment, it's that I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's that opportunity to throw ideas around that wouldn't necessarily be done in that formal setting. Which
you're completely right. So I do a lot of my career has been about being social and about understanding social networks, again, which are very much online and digital. But one of the things I always push is you cannot be social without being social, like without actually meeting people and actually having conversations, as you say, completely. It's having that brain bounce moment where you're like, oh, what do you think about this? So I'll have a lot of ideas, but talking to myself in the mirror isn't generating as much as I'd like. And you want to be across people who have similar passions or similar interests in that respect in order to push your ideas to fruition. And it's a lot harder, I think, trying to sort of try and capitalize on that.
Exactly. And actually it's quite ironic that a social network is called a social network because it's very antisocial, isn't it? Has there been anything from what you've seen as your in your work as a journalist in terms of the social platforms that have really have been the most dominant during the pandemic, for better or for worse, really? I know TikTok has definitely gone up lots of levels, but has there been anything that you've seen or any patterns that have changed?
TikTok's definitely fascinating to watch because it definitely attracts a younger market, but it's also incredibly controversial. So it's worth keeping an eye on that because even just recently, some people want to pull it. It's been banned in certain places, so it means that there are already people that are very much influential and part of TikTok. Then what happens to them? That sort of dissipates, as it were. Facebook, at one point, everyone hated Facebook. Well, a lot of people hated Facebook because they felt it was a very sort of, again, controversial network, in terms of the data, in terms of what was going on. And yet at the same time, I think within this pandemic, a lot of people are still using Facebook, that they're able to be in groups, being in communities. Nextdoor is another app that's come up that a lot of communities are using in order to be more in touch with their actual neighborhood. And that's really interesting. Twitter's always a very strange beast, I think, especially for journalists. It's very much a reporting platform nowadays. Twitter's interesting in people being able to sort of connect. A lot more networking, I think, is going on Twitter actually than perhaps ever before. LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is really sort of pushing into it. So it's becoming very interesting to watch, especially as so many people are losing their jobs or are looking for positions or trying to figure out what's actually around on the market. Who knows what other networks are going to come up? I honestly don't know. Probably need to speak to someone way younger than me, probably one of the sports mentees, who would be aware of this is the next big thing, this is the thing we should all be watching out on. But social networks, I definitely think that more people have had to become reliant on them because of the fact that we're not
Yeah.
in real life networks, which is
No, and it's then particularly for young people, like you just mentioned, it's then reminding them that there's the balance that they need to have with it and use it for the better, and not to become too involved, too obsessed, I guess, as well. That's the next thing, isn't it? So yeah, it's crazy world that we're in. And this leads me nicely onto my next question, which I know we've been dying to talk about. So I ask all the guests that come on if they've got any podcast recommendations, which obviously leads on from the online work that we've been speaking about, but also any book recommendations. Now, I imagine that you have got one book that might be top of your recommended list, and I'd love to hear it.
I see that big green poster. Oh, I don't know. Maybe got one book that you might really enjoy. So yeah, this is actually
this one?
No, good lordy. That one looks so familiar. I think I've got two.
Amazing.
Thank you. So that, I mean, actually, you're Alex, I mean, I've spoken to you about this before in the past. This is a long time coming. This is a long dream, and you know, it's trying not to bore people about it actually. But
how long has it been?
4 years.
Yeah,
4 years in the making since I had the idea. Probably around September, October. Yeah, so 4 years, I think, this month actually. In fact, I was talking to my co-illustrator. I'll talk about the book. He's like, God, you've been badgering me for quite a long time about this one. And I'm like, thanks, because we went back and found our emails when I first approached him. But yeah, I was working in the BBC's business unit. I'd moved departments. Normally I work in something called UGC, which is about dealing with audiences at the front facing, and sometimes it's good to rotate around because of the fact that you're dealing with sometimes quite traumatic material, that you're dealing with quite intense material, and it's always good to move around and, you know, see what else ticks your boxes and makes you quite creative. And 2016, significant year, Brexit year, in terms of, you know, there was a lot going on. And I thought, you know what, I don't understand a lot about business. Let me go and see what's going on. And I got hired, not because of my business expertise, but because of my storytelling skills, because I know how to make things relatable. I know how to make stories resonate with people.
Yeah.
So I got hired for that. And I had huge false imposter syndrome when I got there, because you've got, you know, amazing people who know what they're doing, who have expertise, who've come from investment banking, who've got, like, you know, economics backgrounds. They are absolutely brilliant. I don't know what I was doing, like, in terms of the language, understanding the codes that were used, that for many people are common parlance. I didn't know. I wasn't familiar with it. And I was looking for a really easy guide, like a dummy's guide, as it were, or a fun guide as to how to understand business. And there were lots out there. I'm not going to say there's not lots out there. There are lots out there, but not quite what I was looking for. And I really like animals. You know, I worked in the natural history unit for a little bit, you know, and it made me realize how, especially in the social world, nature sells. Nature's really important. Everybody resonates with nature in some form. So whenever they'd mention an animal, like, you know, they'd have a meeting and it'd be like, unicorns. Whoa, unicorns, that's so cool. Wait, what's a unicorn? And, you know, at that point, and it's a bit more familiar now, I think, to a lot of people. You know, it's a $1 billion startup. So you've got, like, Facebook is a unicorn, Google would have been a unicorn, a lot of unicorns. But there are lots of other animals. They're like, you know, cash cows. Again, we'll have heard of that, but do we actually know what that means? There are bear markets. Again, you know, I'm in business. Well, I don't know what a bear market is. I don't quite understand how it works. And so I would just be sketching really simple sketches, very detailed. You know, my illustrations are a particular way. And then I thought, hold on a minute, this is worth a trot, as it were.
See what we did there?
Why not go the whole hog? And yeah, and so I just started drawing, started sketching, and started looking at these different animals and seeing what they meant and trying to understand them through using visuals. And, you know, sketching a unicorn with a hoodie, because at that point, you know, the startup people were very famous for that. Mark Zuckerberg was very famous for that. And then I found, you know, sometimes you have to know what your forte is. I'm a good illustrator. You know, I'm not going to say I'm brilliant, but I'm a good illustrator. But I'm a much better researcher. I'm a much stronger, you know, etymologist. I'm a much stronger marketing person. I have my skill set. And I came across on Instagram back in the day when you could see what everyone else was looking at and what everyone else was liking, a guy called Dominic Bailey. And I keep saying to him, I think it was a picture of a squirrel, and I had a look back now and it wasn't a picture of a squirrel at all. I think it was like a rabbit or a hare that he'd drawn, and I really liked it. So then I started following him. And I just quite liked his styles and his image and what he was doing. We had never worked significantly closely together to know each other. But I just clearly, without any embarrassment whatsoever, or so it seems, just approached him and said, hi, I've got an idea. Do you want to come along for the ride? I can't pay you. I haven't, I don't know what's going to happen with this. But there are like loads of animals in the business world, and it's really weird, and nobody has ever collated that together with a significant number of illustrations. And I think it's really important that he believed in me.
Yes.
He was a stranger, but he was like, do you know what, she's weird, but this is a really interesting idea. And it's not to say that everybody believed in me or everybody believed in the idea. I think at one point somebody was like, Dhruti, I have all the stupid ideas, this is like the most stupidest, which says something because I clearly have a lot of ideas. And for me, I was like, that doesn't matter, because I know there's a need for it. If somebody like me wants something simple, I'm not going to be the only one. And until people see it, the thing that we found is that until people saw it, they didn't understand the concept. Like, what are you talking about?
And I guess as well, just sorry to interrupt there, but you said as well, when you started into working in journalism in the business industry, you did have this imposter syndrome. But actually, it'd be interesting to see how many people come back from this book and actually say, this has helped me so much. And the people that do pretend to walk the walk and talk the talk, actually, have you had that yet in terms of the feedback from the book?
Yes.
and how relevant it's been and how helpful it's been?
Yeah, this is the thing. This is where I feel really proud. Like, when you don't want to be like sort of egotistical or anything, but I'm so super proud of it, because this is now it's a financial literacy this is, I can't even say the word. It's a financial literacy project. Maybe that's my next book on how to say certain things. It's a financial literacy project. And I hadn't thought about it in that terms when I was first coming up with the idea. And at the end of the day, when it's like post-COVID economy, where people need to understand finance words, you cannot be engaged in conversations about money and about finance and economics if you don't understand the lingo. Yeah. And that's for me, it's really important. I hadn't quite realized until this year why this sort of thing is so important. And
have you been thinking, why hasn't this been done before?
Maybe because it was such a simple idea. It's definitely, I mean, it's not like it hasn't been, I'm the first person ever to go, oh wow, here's a drawing of a cash cow. What no one's ever done, as far as I can tell before, I'm pretty convinced, because I have done a lot of research, is put it all together in one succinct format. And that's because no one, I think, has ever been able to think of it in that way. So that's where we have done something slightly strange and something very sort of vanguardy in that respect. And I would speak to experts, and we were very lucky in that we got business experts to look over it, to check. I mean, I say lucky, but also it was important to do so. Yeah. And they were like, we've learned something new. We've gone through this and we've not, we didn't know all of these terms before. Some of them we would go back in time into history to find out, a guinea pig director, where's that come from? One, it's cool because we can, Dominic has literally drawn a guinea pig in a director's chair, but it's also, what you'd now call a silent partner. So somebody who'd put in the guinea and then sort of step back. I didn't know what that was, but that's really interesting. Yeah, yak shaving is one of my favorites, actually, and that comes from like a computing term, and yet it's about a process where you don't realize quite how important that bit in the cog is until later on, but you've got to do it, otherwise your process just stalls. And you think these terms are floating around all over the shop and different people are using them, but what they have in common is that they're all businessy people, or people, no, they're not even business people, they're people whose lives are affected by business in some way, and that means that's everybody. So that's whether it's kids or whether it's 100 years old. At the end of the day, if the 100 years old have got pensions, that means there are terms that are in reports, in market wealth reports, that people are using that are talking about the behavior of the investors who are using their money to play with pensions, as it were, to deal with pensions. Yeah. If you've got kids, they'll be affected by cash cows, because you're thinking, okay, I think they use milk as a cash cow often, but everybody is affected in some way. The question is whether they know the language. And so, you know, we got actually a really nice tweet from the innovation chief at Wall Street Journal, and he's like, these are beautiful illustrations, and you know, I've learned things. And you're like, but he's so high up, man.
Yeah.
You know, I've got like editors, and I'm like, they're like, we've just learned stuff, this is really fun. And I'm like, this is given, you know, I got in fact there's a professor, I think, of economics who's just given a reference we've just put up on the on Pavilion, who are my publishers, on their website, and he's written a very academic reference about how this is really important for people to understand and decode the language. And for me, this was just, as I said, a simple idea. I've got, you know, we tested it on children, because if you can make something, I honestly believe, and I think you know, I think this is why you and I get on. Children aren't stupid, you know, they're not stupid. What it is, though, it's about having a dual respect with kids. And for me, it was important to test it on children, because if we expose them to terms like this, it means business isn't scary. Now, I was really scared of business. And when people would talk about business or consultancy or stuff like that, I'd be like, oh, no, that's not for me. That's other people. And it's like, no, it's not. You know, it's for anyone. And if you get a child to say, do you know what? If I, you know, I can tell you that a bear market goes down. It goes down, and they're not going to say it goes down by 20%, or if it's like, you know, longer than a run of 2 months, they're going to say it goes down. Why does it go down? Because a bear's paws swat downwards. A bull's horn, a bull, if you're reading in the newspaper, or they're saying in the news, or they're saying whatever, oh, you know, now we're not in a bull run anymore, you know, we're not, we're going to have to wait ages until there's a bull market again. I don't know what that means. But a kid now, hopefully, by looking at this book from 5 years onwards, just even looking at the pictures so they're not scared. Oh, a bull's horn, a bull, when it's like fighting, because, you know, the idiom goes back to when bears and bulls were apparently pitted against each other back in the olden days. A bull is up, its horns are up, you know, and that means if you're like 5, 6 years old and you're like, oh, you've got that sort of visual link. That's brilliant.
It is a visual link.
That to you 4 years ago.
Yeah, I would have not. I'm sold. I mean, you could be saying anything right now. But that's what I love about the book, is that, like you say, business affects everyone, and not everyone really appreciates that. But immediately, by pulling you in with illustrations, it doesn't frighten people off. And it allows people to engage, all ages, and hopefully that's what's being seen and will continue to be seen as the book progresses. Because I'm definitely nervous in a lot of situations, you know, even around mortgages or anything like that. You just think, no, it's not for me. Well, it is for me, because I have a mortgage, so I need to deal with it. So I hope that lots more people can sort of share in this and enjoy it in the way that I think it deserves to be. And I just have one question about it as well. When you said at the beginning about imposter syndrome, and the reason we know each other is through the wonderful Women of the Future network, where lots of women, particularly in the workplace, they do face that imposter syndrome, which is probably some of the reasons that they don't go on to, you know, the board roles or higher roles within their career. Do you think that's something that you faced when you started working in the business sphere, and another big motivation behind the book is that the fact that you are a woman in a man's world, as much as I hate to say it, and there does need to be that need for change?
I mean, I'm all about sort of gender equality. Like, I'm very much like we need, you know, we need to have more representation. I mean, not just gender. We need to have more representation of people from across spectrums. At the end of the day, you know, I think, look, I'm brown. You know, there aren't actually that many brown journalists. I mean, there are far fewer black journalists, but there aren't that many brown journalists. I'm a brown. I'm a woman. I'm a Jane. That's my my religion. I'm already like ticking loads of minority boxes, as it were. That means for me, I've constantly had to push through. You know, I've had to constantly push through where people don't ever expect me to be. You know, where I'm not, where you know you're going to stand out. And in business, I was like, I know I can do this, but I don't understand the language. I don't understand what they're talking about. And so what I have to do is figure out a way to be able to progress, to have that confidence, so that I can beat that false imposter syndrome, because I shouldn't need to have it. I'm here on my own merit. I wasn't chosen because I'm brown. I better not have been. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't chosen because I was a woman. I was chosen because I've got significant storytelling skills. You know, I have a really strong record behind me. I've won awards. I don't swear. I know my stuff. I know it very, very well. You know, I was in DC, Washington, DC last year for like 4 months. So this is post business. I could have been petrified out there. Like I was. But by the end of it, I had 30 stories and then broken digital records. So the minute I'm immersed in something and I think, okay, I'm going to do it, it's fine. And with everybody else, I think that's the issue is confidence. It's like you think, no, not you think, you are often the only one. So you already got to have some chutzpah anyway to have been there. I mean, I'm on a board now. You know, I'm on the board of a small charity, like you know yours, and it's a journalism charity. And for me, that's really important. But when they asked me, I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. You know, is a board for me? What's it about? I've never been on a board before. And then it was like, I can keep sitting there and thinking, I'm not sure, or I can try it. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. And I think that's where, especially with women, we have to, you know, we have to support each other and
shout about what we ourselves are good at.
and lift each other, you know. So it's like, you know, say, you know, I know that you know, I know that you're amazing, you know, Alex, we've been in touch for quite a while, and I'm like, blooming hell, that woman, she's like pushing herself, she's got the drive. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. I know that they'll be, well, if you're anything like me, and I do think we're similar in that respect, it's horrible sometimes. It's like, why is it so hard? It shouldn't be this hard. Is it hard for that person? It's not fair. Like, why am I constantly having to do this? You know, you probably have become a spreadsheet queen. I blooming hate spreadsheets, but
I love spreadsheets.
Oh, you're going to have to teach me. But do you know what I mean? But we have to become spreadsheet queens.
Yes.
We have to understand them in order to be able to map things out. And that becomes in itself, you know, a language of understanding. It's like, if I want to succeed in XYZ, I'm going to have to put the hard work in, and it's going to be harder for me. I don't know why it is, but well, I know it shouldn't be, but it is.
Yeah.
You know? And you're right. In a business sphere, it is often more masculine. You know, you've got the 30% club, etc. So there are definitely people who are trying to make a difference. And me, I'm trying to make a difference with this tiny little book, which has got nothing to do with my brownness, nothing to do with being a woman, nothing to do, you know, with any of that. But yet it's important that I am a brown woman who's created a book, because it's like going, if I can do that, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a limitation.
Relatable role models, isn't it, for young people, that they can think, I can go on and do something, whatever that might be, and I can achieve that, and nothing is stopping me, whether that's, you know, ethnicity, background, whatever it is, everything is there and available and achievable.
It's hard. It's definitely going to be, and it probably will be hard. You know, it will be harder for you as a woman. It will be harder for me as a brown woman. But if we can get the support that we need, those networks that we need, the connections that we need, you know, where that hard work is that we've put in to work that 10 times harder, we can then lift it and get it to the places, you know, our projects, whatever they may be, to the people that need them, the people that need that lift in the way that we needed a lift a while ago.
They need that positivity.
They do need positivity. Like tea comes into everything.
It does. Tea makes everything better.
Without, honestly, you know, so when I was in DC, honestly, and I mean, I lived in Thailand for a little bit as well. If I had not taken, I'm not even joking, like bags of like English like tea with me, I would have had a much harder time coping. It was tea, like I mean, we jest, but at the same time you need to have some sort of motif that grounds you. And in a way, actually, I do think tea is one of those motifs. Tea is very, very important to, you know, maybe we should collaborate in a book about tea, but
Let's do it.
Tea is something that it brings people together, and it's so unique and so individual at the same time. Like you can rest and be like, I just need a soothing cup of tea. Like I've been doing a lot of, I mean, you know, the book's amazing. I'm really grateful actually that I've got this project in this fucking weird time of pandemic to have focused on. What happens after the launch, I have no idea, because I'll have to try and come up yet another project. But
it's that separation as well, isn't it, from day to day and the mundane side, having this to push and to know is at the end of it, I'm sure has been huge for you.
But it's also like in my day-to-day job, a lot of the stuff that I do in within work is it's not necessarily positive. We're covering stories around coronavirus, around pandemic, around, sadly, around death, around, you know, people being separated. And one of the things that I often say to people when I've you know, had a conversation with them on the phone in my bedroom is, make sure you go and have a cup of tea or coffee, whatever your preference is, you know, to have that sort of soothing moment, to be like, I've just gone through something very intense with you, let's have tea. And it's like with me, probably after this, because I find these, like, you know, it's quite intense to me, like, oh my God, it's my baby, I'm talking about my baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm very grateful to you that it's like positivity, because I'm like, yeah, I'll be sipping on my tea, just not put it in my mic, but be sipping on my tea. You know, it's important to have that grounding thing. I think it's key. How about you? What's your grounder?
Oh goodness, that is a good question. I've really tried to actually, in lockdown, I've got into yoga so much more, and I've never done that before. When I was at school, I had such the stereotypical view of yoga at school was it's not for the sporty people, and now I hate myself for even thinking that, because it's been so good for me in a time, like you say, there's been times in lockdown it's been so mundane, it's just been the same thing, working on your own, and you know, and actually having that has just lifted me so much. So I'm a huge advocate for yoga and a cup of tea all the time.
Not at the same time though.
No, definitely not. No. Lots of water and then tea, so that makes everything better. Oh well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about your book, and I would love to be able to share with everyone how they can get their hands on one, so we will put that in the link to the podcast, but do you want to just share quickly how you can find out more about it?
Yeah, I mean, basically, follow me on Twitter. It's the only thing I talk about. No, if you go to Pavilion Books, so they are actually my publisher. They've got a nice page about it. Otherwise, I actually do have on DhrutiShah.com. I've actually created a separate books page. You'll also find out what else I'm up to. But it doesn't matter where you are in the world, because that's the other thing. It's like, it's global. It's got links where you can buy it wherever you are. It's less in the UK. It's less than 10 quid. And for the sake of, like, you know, educating people, I don't think that's a bad deal at all.
For the whole family, the whole family as well.
It is. I'm going to be really cheeky. Shall I like show? Like,
yes.
That's Lion Economies.
I was just looking at it actually. I was just going to see if I could test you, if I could flick to one of these pages.
Oh, you can try it. I'll probably go, shoot, I did that one 4 years ago.
Okay, ready?
Let's see.
We can cut this out if it doesn't work.
It's fine. I'll be like, no, this is the whole point of the book.
Okay, can you talk me through Mouse Potato?
Oh yeah, that is me. It's somebody who is, that is actually one of the sketches I started off on. I don't do that often. But some of them I'd have a little rough sketch, and then I'd send it to Dominic going, I think we should do something along this, and then he'll do his magic. But Mouse Potato, they are based, as far as I can remember, it's a person who's basically constantly on their computer. So basically, like all of us, a lot of us are probably now mouse potatoes. You're on your computer at home, where you would have a couch potato, which was a very sort of regular phrasing, where you'd watch somebody just hanging around watching TV. This is more about somebody who's on a different type of screen, on their laptop, on their tablet, but hanging out on their couch, hanging out on their, you know, chair, just constantly on screens. I guess we all are. Like, this year is the year of the mouse potato.
Yeah, that's weird that I selected that one.
It's strange.
Yeah, that's correct. Well done. And it derived in the 1990s.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I'll have to.
Thank you so much. And my final question, although I could sit here talking all day, is we always ask our guests to nominate one person to join us on another episode of Positivity. Is there anyone that you would like to nominate?
You like to go global?
Oh yeah, we can go global, definitely.
Okay, I don't know how crazy busy she is, but one day you should definitely get my friend Rafelwe Ledwaba, who is she was South Africa's first Black female helicopter pilot.
Wow.
And she's amazing. She's so inspirational. She runs STEM programs for girls in South Africa and across other countries in Africa. And I met her when I was doing a film about this time 2 years ago. In fact, it came out this time 2 years ago in World Service. And I'm just in awe of her. Like, as a role model, she is just amazing. And so we've stayed in touch, and she's got like a travel blog coming out, which is interesting considering there's been limitations on flying. She's a commercial pilot. She's a STEM advocate. She's just every time
Wow.
she's an Obama fellow. She's a, you know, she got lady then
she can't do.
She got achievements. And she's just really. But the thing is, the reason why I'd suggest her, she's just really nice.
Yeah.
She's just so kind and
good to have a couple with.
Cares. Yeah, she's great to have a couple with. Like when I was in DC, she came to visit me, you know.
Oh wow, yeah.
People around you that really inspire you. And so Refer Away for me is just absolutely gobsmacking. Wow.
Yes.
You know.
Oh wow. I want her on tomorrow now. Let's make this happen. Oh, thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat, and wish you all the best with the book, and we will be spreading the word about it everywhere that we can as well. So thank you so much, Dhruti.
Thank you.